Good evening. This meeting will come to order. This is Zoning Board of Appeals, May 2022 meeting. We have, as you can see, we're starting out with our masks again. I guess everyone should wear a mask. But if you're doing your presentation, when you're up at the microphone, if you have a health reason why you want to wear a mask to do your presentation, that's fine, but I would like you to voice yourself as best you can, you know, and that would be without a mask, just so we can hear you better. So let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Ms. Ferrante.
Here.
Mr. Montano.
Here.
Mr. Soto.
Here.
Mr. Wolf.
Here.
Ms. Hirsch.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
And Mr. Dubois is excused tonight. Mr. Tuzzola.
Here.
Thank you.
Also present is Stephen Harris, our zoning officer, Meg Green, our recording secretary. If you feel anyone on this board, a commissioner on this board, might be a conflict of interest to your application, please let us know. Just so you know, item number 4, 201 Kings Highway, is postponed to June, in case you're here for that one there. Other than that, let's get started. Ms. Secretary.
Item number 1, 102 Melba Street, MBP 29/589/4A, R5, Thomas Lynch Esquire for Jose Tiago, owner. Vary section 3.1.4.1 to allow building height of 38.5 feet, where 35 feet permitted, to allow flat roof design for addition to existing single-family residence.
Mr. Lynch, so last month we didn't have the hearing on this, of course.
That's correct.
I guess the question to ask you is there any significant change in this application from when it was first denied?
Yes, a major change, which I'd be pleased to present to the board.
I guess we're all willing, we're ready, okay. Yes, go ahead, proceed.
All right, thank you. And
Maybe your microphone, is it on?
I think it's on, right? Meg? How's that? Okay. All right, just for the record, Mr. Chairman, my name is Thomas Lynch. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Lynch, Trimbecki, and Boynton, and my office is located here in Milford at 63 Cherry Street. I have the pleasure tonight to reappear before this board with my client, Joe Tiago. Joe is the owner of the property located at 102 Melba Street. As the board is well aware, an application was presented to you at the February and March meetings of the board. I'm going to address some procedural matters at the start, and the first one is I'm going to ask that the record of the public hearings for both March and February be included in the record for this proceeding tonight. So I'd ask just that we have a complete record then of all of the facts that were stated in the February and March meetings, as well as the comments I'm going to make to you tonight. And as Sarah read at the start, the application that we're presenting to you is identical to the one that was presented in the prior meetings. We're seeking a variance of section 3141 of the zoning regulations. What my client wants to do is remodel this house, and I went through the minutes of the prior meeting, and I really want to stress this to you. It seemed as though the comments that led to the board voting in a negative fashion on the application for the variance for the height of the building really focused on the fact that the board felt that an additional level of living space was going to result from the remodeling of this house. The prior plans had a Trek decking on the roof. It had railings across the top, and it had what I referred to when I first saw the renderings, the stairway to heaven. There was a large staircase in the back of the house that was going to access the roof area. So I think the board, for lack of a better term, I think the board was quite concise and very forthright with the comments that they felt that this was going to result in parties or use of the roof, which really was not my client's intent at all. My client's intent throughout all of this is to expand the roof line, the existing roof line forward to accommodate an addition to his master bedroom on the 3rd level. So you have the plans. I wish I could have them up on the screen, but you have the plans as part of your application that we presented to you tonight, and the plans have been changed in a substantial manner. The railings across the top have been eliminated, number one. Number two, the Trek decking is eliminated. There'll be just gravel roof. It'll be a normal roof design. It's a contemporary roof to match what a lot of homes are being designed along the shorefront. I have 2 clients that have flat roof designs that are going up now down in East Broadway. There were 2 that were developed on Hillside Avenue. So when the board denied Joe's application at the prior meetings, he went back to the architect. And again, I'll be very honest with you. I've appeared before this board many, many times over the years. When Mr. Tirado first came in to see me, I said, Joe, you got to make a major change to the plans. This board is reasonable. This board works with citizens when they come before the board with an application, but the board was concerned about an overuse of the building to result in a 4th level of living space, and I said, you got to get rid of it. And that's what he did. The plans that are submitted to you tonight get rid of any indicia of the top of this house to be used for either casual recreation, for a party, or just sitting out there on lounge chairs. The plans were redesigned to eliminate the stairway to the roof. The only access to the roof now is to get up there to access the AC units that are going to be on the roof through a hatchway. It's going to be a pull-down hatch that you go up, and if a service technician needs to get to the HVAC units, that's how he will do so. There's not going to be a stairway up there. And again, no decking, no railing. And my reading of the board minutes at those 2 meetings, and Bill, I hate to single you out, but in the minutes of the March meeting, the exact quote from you was that you were hesitant to approve the variance because it was going to add an additional living space. At those 2 public hearings, a petition was submitted to you with numerous neighbors. I think I checked with Joe, and he said that there were some 12 neighbors who signed a petition in favor of that application. And now we've changed the plans to get rid of the concern that the board had. So again, I don't want to overstress it, but I want to go back to the original comments that were made to you back in February and March. This house was built in 2001. For whatever reason, the CO was issued, the city signed off on the height of the building, and there had been an error in the calculation of the midpoint of the roof line to 39.5 feet. This roof will actually reduce that by a foot. The flat roof design will be at elevation 38.5. So we've gone out of our way to reduce a nonconformity, and that is one of the standards under case law in Connecticut, as well as the statutes that allow for the board to grant a variance when there's a reduction in a nonconformity. So based on all those arguments, I'd ask you to revisit this. It's a reasonable request. He's reducing the height of the building. He's not going to use that deck as a party deck. And I think that's what you were looking for, and I'd hope that you would look at this favorably. Thanks so much.
The third floor, the addition, are we raising the height of the ceiling that's already there?
No, it's going to remain. It's just being bumped out some 6 or 8 feet so that the roof line will then match flush to the front. I assume you've gone by this house numerous times. You know, there's that jog out at the top level. This is now going to come out so that it's straight flush, straight down, and have a contemporary look.
Questions, commissioners? Mr. Soto?
Attorney Lynch, I kind of still have my doubts because I've done a lot of building over the years, and I've never seen somebody put that kind of staircase in, that kind of roof hatch, and that kind of staircase to service an AC unit. It's an awful expensive expenditure just to service that unit when,
The stairway is not going to go to the roof, Bill.
well, you have a roof hatch. And when
The
you look
roof-
at
the-
your thing here,
Yeah, the
it
roof-
shows stairs going right up to the hatch.
No.
Right here, come here.
No, it's going to be a pull-down.
No, look, you have stairs going up, right up to the roof.
Do you have the most recent plans?
I have the one that's on the city's website. There's an outline of the stairs going up, right up to the roof hatch. Well, that's what's on the plan.
But it's not. There's not going to be any stairs going up to the roof
Then why do you need the roof hatch?
to service the AC.
Yeah, but you could put a ladder up for that. Well, it's on the plan, so I have to take it for what it's worth, you know what I mean?
Can I have just one more? There is not going to be a stairway to the roof. The only access to the roof is going to be the hatch with a pull-down for somebody, you know, one of those narrow pull-downs. You're not going to have 10 people going up on the roof, shimmying up a little.
Well, you have a roof hatch, but then you have to have a ladder to come down. They don't make a pull-down ladder for a roof. That's an attic hatch you're talking about.
That's what's going to access the roof.
An attic hatch is going to be,
Yeah.
I don't see how you're going to do that, but, you know.
It was designed to, again, address the concern that you were going to have people going up to the roof.
My
and
thought on this is,
partying.
there was 3 failures on here. One, the architect failed the original house in 2000.
Correct.
Then the building department and the zoning failed it.
Yep.
And then the surveyor failed it.
Yep.
And now the neighbor called next door. This was the big thing that I was worried, you know, that bothered me. The neighbor called zoning and said the house was too high. And this is the new plan? Okay, thanks. And they said, no, we have a surveyor. So, I mean, had they investigated, then it would have been solved and we wouldn't have this problem, but.
There's no question, there's an existing nonconformity, but it's not a
You know the old
situation-
game, you put the thing in and then later on comes the decking and later on comes some rails. You know what I mean, right? I'm just saying. This is the most recent.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Harris.
just for the record, with this submission, there is no rooftop stairway enclosure. There's just the hatch, as reflected on the plans.
Stephen, we're going to have to ask you to speak without your mask for a minute. It's very hard to hear you.
Just to clear something up for the record, there is no rooftop stairway enclosure. With this set of plans, there's just that hatchway.
But the hatchway, even Meg just gave me the most recent plan, shows a staircase up to the hatchway. I mean, Stephen, they make some big hatches. This is at least 5 or 6 feet long that could open up and you just walk right onto the roof.
I just wanted to clarify that there was no rooftop enclosure.
You know, a
Like
roof hatchway is normally 3 foot by 3 foot. It's got a metal cover on it. This, if you look at the size of it, this is a 6, 7, 8 foot hatchway that could be opened up and you could step right onto the roof from the stairs.
Make it a condition of approval. This was done in good faith. This was done in good faith to address the board's concerns. You're not going to have railings, you're not going to have decking, and you're going to shimmy up a little hatch.
Well,
to
my
get up
main
there.
concern was the house was built in error, and it should never have been built that high.
But we can't
And now
redo
by
it.
allowing anything above that, we're increasing the nonconformity.
No, we're decreasing it. It's going to be 38.5 feet. Right now, the midpoint as calculated is 39.5.
Well, you could leave the existing roof and put a hatch on that roof, and you could put a flat area for the condenser and save this, and leave that roof there, and he'd save a lot of money.
But you can't bump it out so he can expand his, this whole thing is designed to increase.
You could put a flat roof on the addition and leave the pitched roof on the main house.
That'll look lousy.
I'm just,
This is going to look nice.
Are you
see what the
satisfied?
rest of the board has
Are
to
you
say.
satisfied with your answers so far?
Yeah, I'm all done.
Any other questions for Mr. Lynch right now? Yes.
Through you, Attorney Lynch,
Yes, Gary.
is it true that the home is in a flood zone?
Is it in a flood zone? Yeah, but
And
it's
the-
not on the shore side, it's across the street.
But the first floor elevation, it's been raised 9 feet?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Lynch right now? Is there anyone else speaking in favor of this application? Anyone else speaking in favor? Is there anyone here opposed? Commissioners, other questions? We have somebody opposed? Okay. Please pull the microphone down to your level so we can hear you. Thank you. That'd be good for you, too.
I am that one that called years ago when they built those houses. And we were assured that they were...
Ma'am, we need your name and
Oh,
your
sorry,
address,
it's Margaret
please.
Coyle, 104 Melba Street. I live right next door. And if they want to build a flat roof, I have no problem with that. But my concern is I don't trust them now, because we were told when those houses, we jokingly called them the Twin Towers when they were built, my husband and I. But unfortunately, my husband passed away that same year, so we couldn't really pursue it. But when we called, they said, oh, no, they're fine, when in fact they were not, which you all know now. But my concern agrees with this gentleman here about, okay, it's a flat roof. Okay, so we're going to add railings, and then we're going to add this, and we're going to add decking. That's my only concern. If they stick with a flat roof and that's it, I have no problem. But now I don't really trust that that's what they're going to do. Like you said, it's very questionable. And that's all I have to say. Like if you do approve it, there'll be a way to enforce it. They'll get just what they're asking for and nothing extra, right? No railings later on, no stairway. That's my concern. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else opposed? Okay. This hearing's closed. Whoop, oh, you want to rebut? Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'll unclose it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So a variance can be conditioned, number one. Number two, a restrictive covenant could be recorded on the land, drafted by the city attorney's office, that would prohibit the building department from issuing any sort of a building permit that would entail railings around or any expansion of the size of that hatch to go to the roof, or any future stairway to get to the roof. So there is a way to do this and ensure that that roof never gets used as living space. And Mrs. Coyle appeared at the last meeting, and that was her concern, and that's why we came here tonight to address that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, this hearing is closed. Well, we don't have our discussion right now, so.
So, no,
we need-
Mr.
We need a
Chair.
motion.
Okay, no, go ahead.
I make a motion to approve. Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. We have a second on the motion. Discussion?
You take people for the truth. If someone goes and tries to do a build-out, you have neighbors that would object. If we wanted to put a restrictive covenant on there, I don't have a problem with that. But As for a size of a hatchway, being a 3x5 with a full walk-up, that does evidence, we're going to carry lawn chairs up there and we're going to bring furniture up there, which is a risk versus a 3-foot by 3-foot hatchway. But if you have a weatherproof access doorway, I can't fight with a 3x5 versus a 3x3 or a 4x8. So,
That's probably 8 feet.
right, with the curb and yeah, a Bilko, right? If that's what they want, I'm okay with it.
I'm still against it. I think we're setting a bad precedent. There's a house next door, identical, was built the same way, and then, you know what happens? People don't take permits out, and a little over the time, they start putting listen, I've been in the building, you know how many people I go to, and they say, we don't want a permit. Oh. You know how many customers tell me, don't take out a permit? We don't want a permit, you know, we don't want to get involved, especially when Milford had all the problems over the years where it took you, 10 trips down there to get a building permit. It's not like that now, but, look, I know what people do. I've been in business long enough, and down the road comes decking, and then a couple sections of railing, and the poor woman's calling up, and they're not doing anything about it. Stephen's one person. He's overworked right now. He can't even get to all the complaints. So I'm still against it.
I guess one of your reasons also would be that it was always a non-conforming house, although, as Mr. Lynch had even stated, that they're taking away from some of the non-conformity, but it's still a non-conforming house. Comments? Other discussion? Any other discussion before I call for a vote?
Excuse me, can the record show that, as Attorney Lynch said, deed restrictions and,
Yes.
you can? I have no problem with that.
Yes, we can approve this. If you're thinking about approving it, you can add some conditions. So whoever would want to make those conditions, I guess you should state them right now.
I think, as a point of order, I think Mr. Wolf would have to amend his motion.
Can I just say one thing on this? On the conditions, when the city sold the firehouse on Spring Street, the conditions on that were recorded on the deed that it had to be always used for residential. Well, there's a contractor in there now with about 3 dump trucks parked in the front, in the back. He's using it as a construction headquarters. So deed restrictions are not enforceable. That's only my opinion on that, but.
Sarah?
I understand what you're saying, Bill, and I do agree, but I also don't think we can make decisions based on that. You know, we have regulations, we have laws, we put the restrictions on paper, and it's out of our hands. We have to assume that it's going to be enforced. We can't really say no just because we assume people are going to be shady when we've put the language down. So I get what you're saying, and I know that things get bypassed a lot, and it's a frustration we've all seen around town, but I don't think that we can make a decision based on that.
Mr. Harris, we can leave this hearing open to think about this, can't we? How much time do we have on this?
You can leave the hearing open for 35 days, barring extensions.
Your thoughts on that?
I would be in favor of keeping it open.
Okay, you want to think about this? We need a motion to keep it
I
open?
make a motion to keep it open until next meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to move this to the next meeting. Ms. Ferranti?
With the motion.
Mr. Montano?
With the motion?
Mr. Wolf?
With the motion.
Mr. Soda?
With the motion.
I'm with the motion. Okay, our decision will be, Mr. Harris, this is for a decision only next month, correct?
I know you held the hearing open, so you can entertain more testimony.
Decision only next month.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, you held the...
We can't, I really can't hear you without, with that.
The meeting, the hearing's been held open,
All
so
right, we have
you can
it, okay.
entertain more testimony.
Okay, so
Didn't Joe close the hearing?
I did.
So we're reopening it?
Sorry, I misspoke. He did close the hearing. Let's back up several steps. He started to close the hearing, gave Mr. Lynch an opportunity to rebut the person who was in opposition. I don't think you closed the hearing. Well, you
Let's
must
leave it
have-
open. We have a vote to
You
leave
mu-
it open. Let's leave it open.
You must have closed the hearing because you entertained a motion.
Stephen, can we just leave the discussion in the vote part open until next month?
Pardon?
Leave the discussion in the vote part open until next month?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, we're all settled? We settled?
Yes.
Okay. Before we go any further, is there any way we can get more light in here? Because we're going to be in the dark in another half hour. We're on a short recess here so while we look. Here we go. We got the lighting. Okay.
Item number 2, 114 Merwin Avenue, MBP 59/737/15, R 7.5, Kevin Crusaden Esquire for Peter Dreyer, owner, appeal the decision in accordance with the provisions of Section 9.2.1 regarding decision to issue a zoning permit dated 3/29/22 for the construction of a single-family house in violation of the zoning regulations and the city engineer's drainage concerns.
Okay. Before we get started with this, Mr. Harris, we have a lot of new information that was just submitted this afternoon, right past lunchtime. So is there anything that you should clarify before we move forward with this?
No, I think this is good to move forward.
Okay, well, Mr. Crusaden, once you get started, you're going to have to give us exactly what I'm talking about right now. All right, so go ahead, Mr. Crusaden.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Kevin Crusaden. My office is at 3 Lafayette Street. I have some paper copies of what was submitted electronically today, if I can pass those out to the board briefly.
Kevin, they already have.
They already have all the paper
Stephen,
copies?
yes.
47 pages, is that it?
Yes. So, and I understand that was a lot of information in short time. I'm not expecting the board to make a decision tonight if the board's not ready to. For clarity, and this is in the beginning of the memo, and I think that, Mr. Chairman, this is what you were alluding to. Stephen had given an appeal notes and sent them out to the board, I believe, yesterday, or it came through the zoning office yesterday, stating that there may be a question about whether the board has jurisdiction to hear this application because we had appealed it too late. And he referenced the issuance of a foundation permit in 2020 at some time frame. For clarification, there was another permit that was issued at the end of March, I think it was March 29th, zoning permit 22-0155. That's the zoning permit, yes, issued on March 29th. We appealed that decision on April 5th, which is well within the 15-day appeal period. So there's no jurisdictional question. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, the city stipulates that the appeal is timely.
Right, so the problem here right now is, I mean, you're saying it's not timely, but he's saying that the application numbers.
No, I think Mr. Harris said he was willing to agree to stipulate that it was timely.
Yes, the city stipulates that this appeal is timely.
Okay, proceed.
So, and also for clarification, my client, he owns 112 Merwin Avenue with his wife. They also own a house across the street at 105 on the water, Merwin Avenue. 112 Merwin Avenue is currently vacant. They have no issues or concerns about a house being built at 114 Merwin Avenue. Their only concern right now is the fact that the flooding has substantially increased since the construction has begun. So we believe that that could be addressed or should be addressed by complying with the inland wetlands permit, which specifically references a letter from the city engineer from October of 2021 requiring that an acceptable drainage plan be supplied to the city engineer. I confirmed with Mr. Podleski, the city engineer, late last week. He still has not received an acceptable drainage plan. So the issue in front of the board is whether this permit, the one that we're talking about, issued in March 29th, 2022, should have been issued. It's our position it shouldn't have been issued because the wetlands approval, and I listed all the facts here. You can read it. You can make your own analysis of it. I do have one typographical error in there that I'll clarify in a minute. But the real issue is that when you apply for a zoning permit, you're supposed to have a valid, if it's inland wetlands approval is required, which it definitely is in this case, you're supposed to have a valid inland wetlands approval. That's a condition precedent to issuing the zoning permit. In this case, and I had numerous conversations with Mr. Harris about this in emails, which are all part of the record, and you've had an opportunity to maybe review some of them, highlighting this as an issue going back to early 2021 or the summer of 2021 at least. When the foundation was constructed, the concrete blocks that I mentioned in my memo and the additional fill that was deposited eventually on the site was not part of the application to inland wetlands. It was not part of the approval for inland wetlands, and it didn't occur until around the time that the foundation was installed. Mr. Mooney, I don't know if he's here tonight. My clients had several conversations with him. He had reached out because there was an email chain between myself and Stephen and the city engineer. Mr. Mooney, for the record, is the owner, builder, developer of this lot and a couple of the other lots next to it, that he is going to get the drainage sorted out and it'll all be fixed by the time he's done working. The problem is, there's several, and I've experienced this with other clients. We don't know what the final elevation is going to be, okay? We don't know whether, I think the concrete blocks that were not on the inland wetlands approved plan, but that were on the plan, the concrete blocks on the property line that block the flow of water from my client's property, which Mr. Mooney admitted in an email or acknowledged in an email. The back corner of my client's lot historically drained over 114 Merwin Avenue. You're not allowed to just stop somebody's drainage. That's a separate private action, but that's also another concern. So as you go forward, if we don't know the elevation and we don't know what type of drainage is going to be finalized, we don't know where the drainage is going to be placed. We don't know what it's going to look like. The issue that the builder could potentially face is because this property is also in a flood zone, and I talk about that in my memo as well. The elevation could change, the grade could change, and then that impacts what the ultimate height of the building is going to be. So I've had clients that have ended up getting themselves in trouble at the end of when they're trying to get a CO, they have a buyer for the property, they're trying to sell the property, and then they're screaming, to Joe Griffith, please issue me the CO so I can have this closing. It's appropriate to address it now. Why Stephen has, even though we've complained about it, has decided not to enforce that or say, hey, look, I'm going to either rescind the zoning permit or I'm not going to issue the zoning permit to you until you square away the inland wetlands approval, because inland wetlands had no idea that fill was going to be placed on the property. I've spoken with Mary Rose about that, and they had no idea that the concrete blocks were going to be placed. So specifically with respect to the zoning regulations, section 4.1.16 Any fill to be deposited within 100 feet, this is a zoning regulation, within 150 feet of an inland wetland shall be subject to review by the Milford Inland Wetlands Agency. That did not happen here yet because that was not part of the plan or the application that was approved by Inland Wetlands. Secondly, also in that same section, any building or structure to be constructed or located within 150 feet of any wetland shall be subject to review by the Milford Inland Wetlands Agency. I placed the definition of structure in this memo as well. Anything constructed or erected which requires location on the ground or attachment to something having a location on the ground. It's our position that the concrete blocks are considered structures. I did have an opportunity to meet with Mr. Griffith and Mary Rose and Stephen and some members of the staff to try to resolve this this was late last week, and to try to resolve this before burdening the board with hearing this appeal. We got more of a mutual understanding of what 5.8 meant as far as Milford interprets it and what 5.7, so I've revised part of what our argument is going to be, but what the final argument is presented in the memo. The property is land that's located below the regulatory flood protection elevations as defined herein. I think it's AE 11. The procedure required under 5.8 is that no land shall be developed below the regulatory flood protection elevation in any zoning district. There's a lot of exceptions for single-family homes in the zoning regulations for these FEMA floodplain. You don't need a CAM application or a coastal site plan application for a single-family house unless it's within 100 feet of tidal wetlands, or dunes, or Long Island Sound, which this one is not. However, Section 5.8.3, single-family homes and buildings or structures accessory to a residential use, structure again being the concrete blocks that we believe, we don't really know if they're staying there on the site, shall be subject to site plan review only. So, which means you don't need a special permit or a coastal site plan, but you're supposed to have a site plan. And then it goes on with the compliance, no land shall be developed, constructed without full compliance of the sections of the earth fill and removal regulations and all other applicable provisions of these regulations, including Section 4 and including other parts of the zoning regulations that reference inland wetlands approvals or permits required. I just list what the duties and responsibilities of the zoning officer. That's pulled right out of the zoning regulations, so you have that. These are important facts. I said it's located in the flood zone. I've already said that and you can read that the inland wetlands and the city engineer did not review the plan that the zoning permit was based on. Fill's been added. And that third bullet point under the facts, it should say the application approved by inland wetlands did not indicate fill being deposited on site. I had a typo where it said it did indicate, it did not indicate. And then further, there's another memo from the city engineer in December of 2021 because my client's getting concerned and we're making complaints to the zoning and nothing's happening. At one point in time, Mr. Mooney started construction to frame the house without the permit. He subsequently went back and got the permit, which is the subject of this appeal. But in December of 2021, Mr. Podleski, you can read that he's maybe irritated or frustrated at this point. More troubling is the fact that despite repeated requests from this department, a satisfactory stormwater mitigation has yet to be submitted for review and approval. Further, the stone drainage trenches have not been dimensioned. It is therefore no way to determine if they will provide the satisfactory mitigation. So objectively speaking, altruistically speaking, it's in Mr. Mooney's best interests to provide this plan, see if the engineer says, yes, I sign off on that. We've also hired our own project engineer to review that plan if it's ever submitted, because at some point in time, and I know it's not my obligation and this is not the point of this hearing, at some point in time, he is going to have to satisfy those plans. And he may be too far along at that point where, and this happens, it's not intentional and it's not a criticism of anybody, but I heard the mention of people being overworked in the department. People are overworked in the department. What I have seen happen in the past with my own clients begging for a CO because they have a closing that day, and it's Friday at 4 o'clock, and they're waiting for the CO. Somebody's not here. You know, somebody who knows not to issue the CO is not present that day. And, there's the CO. Sometimes it works in your favor, sometimes it doesn't, but it's a possibility that could happen. So Mr. Mooney, in his emails, which are extremely small font for some reason when they were printed out, he acknowledges that he brought in that fill and that he's going to address it. I also have the minutes from the inland wetlands hearing when this was originally approved. Those were not submitted. I can pass those out. But basically, Mr. Mooney says, even back then, I'll address it later on, I'll address it later on. And maybe he will. But there's a difference between the construction operations where, you know, the silt fence or the soil and erosion controls, sediment controls are moved, or they're in phases, or things are going on, or you're putting fill here temporarily because you got to move it, you know, construct something and then you regrade. There's a difference between the operations and the actual plan that's filed. And in this case, we don't have the plan. There's no satisfactory drainage plan. My client, I submitted one photo, which was an extremely bad flooding day. This property is not tidally influenced. Supposedly, they shut the drain gate from the Long Island Sound flooding onto the property, but the flooding on his lot, since the concrete blocks have been placed, has been substantially increased since the 114 was elevated and the concrete blocks were in place. So that's really our position on it. I'm not going to go through all of the, I will highlight, you know, I did put in there, you know, the plan approved by inland wetlands, and it's hard to see unless you pull it up on your tablet or you know, laptop. The grades, the elevations of the grades are different between what the wetlands approved plan has and what the plan was that the zoning permit was issued on. So I know Stephen in his appeal notes mentioned that there's some inland wetlands mitigation plan that he referenced it as being attached. I didn't see, maybe I didn't understand what the wetlands mitigation plan was that's been attached. I've also filed a complaint with inland wetlands, and I believe, I can't speak for the department, but I believe it's the department's position that at some point in time, this is going to have to be addressed. But I think in fairness to everybody, including my client, including to staff, including to the builder, that it be addressed now. So that's my presentation on that.
All right, questions? Go ahead, Mr. Soto.
Attorney Crusade, you said there was no CAM required?
Correct.
Okay, and I think you answered my question at the end, but you put a complaint into wetlands, they can't do a site visit and put a stop work order on it?
I have spoken with Mary Rose. We had the joint meeting. I can't speak for the department, but I believe, I don't know what the reason for that is.
I mean, if he's bringing fill in, even that block shouldn't even be allowed on.
I agree.
Stephen, is that block perimeter, is that allowed in a flood zone?
When it's my turn to speak, I'll present the city's position.
But I would think, you know, with that, you would come out and put a stop work order on it.
I have asked for that, but that hasn't
Really?
happened yet.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, hold on, I just want to ask one question. So this was never before the P and Z, correct?
Correct.
I think that's
Yeah.
what you just asked.
Yeah.
Okay.
It didn't require a coastal area management report.
Ms. Hirsch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have one question, Attorney Corsadian. A lot of the argument that was included in your materials submitted today centered on the difference between the plan that was submitted and approved by Inland Wetland in 2020, and that's not the same plan you're saying that was issued a permit in 2022, correct?
Correct.
Okay. If this board were to leave this hearing open and entertain the materials that you submitted today, you know, the 41 pages or so, could you also provide a side-by-side comparison of how the plans differ, how that 2020 plan differs from the 2022 plan?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioners? Go ahead, Mr. Wolf.
Kevin, did I hear it right? He started to bring in frame and lumber as well? and started it, and then did he remove it back, or explain that again?
At one point in time, and sometimes this happens, as Mr. Soto knows in the construction industry, the way Milford does it is you can get a foundation permit, and then you come back and you can get a framing to frame the house out. So he had the foundation permit from 2020. At some point in time, which is what really, prompted me to start calling Stephen and hey, was a zoning permit issued? Because I need to appeal that. I don't want to miss the 15-day appeal period. No, a zoning permit wasn't issued, but he was framing the house at that point in time. He had since, I don't know if Stephen reached out to him or he came into the office or what happened. He then went and got the zoning permit in order to do the framing, which is the zoning permit that we appealed from, not because he's building the house. My client is happy for him if he builds and sells a nice house. It's the long-term drainage issues that he's not making the minimum effort to satisfy right now. Yeah.
So we're looking for the city to solve the drainage problem there, correct? I mean, this house is really built probably in a place it shouldn't be. So what are you exactly looking for? You want us to cease the building of this until it's solved?
So very simply, I respectfully, I think the house could be built there. I think that we're not asking the city to fix the drainage problem. We're asking the city to rescind the permit or put a stop work order on the zoning permit until he's compliant with the inland wetlands approval and the city engineer's request, because we're hoping that he provides a satisfactory drainage plan that the city engineer looks at, my client looks at, and they say, okay, go, we're fine with going forward. So that's what we're asking this board to do, is to overturn Stephen's decision to issue the zoning permit, because when you issue a zoning permit, you're required to be compliant with the inland wetlands permit. And he's not compliant with the inland wetlands permit. So this zoning permit never should have been issued.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Soto.
Attorney Crusade, I was reading this at home before, but I can't seem to find the piece of paper. Your email chain, didn't it go back to like May or June of 2020 when you were asking
Right.
for this? So you haven't gotten this information in like a year and a half, and
That's-
now he's building it.
That's correct. And the foundation permit, the foundation permit was issued and was built, and it sat for quite some time. And then the concrete blocks came, and then the fill was deposited, and then my calls to zoning amped up considerably.
I mean, I read your chain. I mean, it goes way back to the beginning. I mean, you've been asking for this information for a long time.
Correct.
Kevin,
Mr. Wolf.
when those blocks were placed, it's on the property line or adjacent to it, and then they filled in on one side? Sorry, I didn't see the pictures well. So we got a direct change
Yes.
in elevation right there.
Correct.
So he's holding in his soil and packing it down using these concrete blocks?
Yes, and it appears from his email responses that he plans on those concrete blocks being there to stay. The problem with that is that may be okay, but inland wetlands has to approve that, and they haven't seen that plan yet.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Harris? Or first, should we ask if there's anyone else speaking on this? Anyone else speaking on this appeal? Okay, Mr. Harris?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Board. Stephen Harris, Zoning Enforcement Officer. First, I'd like to, I'm sorry.
Or
Okay.
get closer to the mic.
Just for the board's edification, this project was happened by fits and starts. There were permits issued, certain work was done, a long period of time went by. Then the builder started framing the house. We learned of this activity going on, and we made the developer get actual zoning and building permits for the construction of the house itself. So in the normal course, you get a permit and you do your work in a timely fashion, but this developer was doing multiple projects at the same time, so that's why there was such a long gap between the initiation of the project and where we are today. Today, the house is still being framed. The lot is still a construction site. So first, I would like to let the board know that this project was an over-the-counter, by right development. No coastal site plan was required. The zoning permit to construct this house is not predicated on prior approval by inland wetlands or engineering, because this is a by right project. Now, this project did go before.
Can we just back up 1 minute and explain what that is? A by right, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Can you explain what a by right
means
is?
over the counter. It means it doesn't need the Planning and Zoning Board's permission for, say, site plan or a coastal site plan or a special permit or something of that nature. They didn't need a variance. So, it's a
Is
by
that
right.
something, I'm sorry to interrupt you, is that something that is usually required? It's like, this piece of property being so questionable, it's like, it's hard to believe that you don't need any kind of, to look into any exceptions before you start it.
Well, it's a bit of, it's not extremely difficult site. It's no more difficult than other flood zone properties that have inland wetlands concerns to the rear of the property. That's not all that uncommon in Milford. So in that respect, this project was not something that came out of left field and required, everybody to knock their heads together. Now, having said it was a by right project, because of the location of the inland wetlands agency did have jurisdiction over their part of the project. And their initial review of it, they granted approval. Subsequent to that, though, after the initial phase of this project languished as other houses in the area were being built, there was a new wetland mitigation plan that the Inland Wetlands Agency approved, which was very different from the initial approval. So any work done on this lot and the other lots in the area has to conform to the mitigation plan of March 2021. That controls, not the prior set of plans or the prior approval, but the new and improved mitigation plan. As far as the city engineer's concerns go, every project does not get a certificate of zoning compliance or a certificate of occupancy until engineering concerns are satisfied. And I understand that there are concerns about drainage and so forth, and those are real. But the developer is going to have to, he does have, if you look on your, let's back up a bit. In your packet, there is a survey which is dated, has a revision date of 3/29/22. And on that plan, you can see behind the house in like a green hatch mark, that's part of the wetlands mitigation berm. So the permit that was issued to construct the house took that into consideration. You'll also know that there are on the west side of the lot, starting from just in front of the house to just behind the house, meeting up at the berm, there is one row of 2 by 2 by 4 concrete blocks. They're only along that one side of the house, the left side, or the west side. They're not on the east side. So I think the crux of this, since Attorney Crusaden has said his client has no objection to a house being built, and it seems to be about drainage concerns and probably to a lesser degree wetlands concerns, those will be dealt with. Like I said, there will not be a certificate of zoning compliance or certificate of occupancy until the builder presents the city engineer with sufficient data to show the drainage. And if you look on the submitted set of plans to build this house, you'll see that the developer is planning to drain this lot towards the street, and from the front half of the lot towards the street, and from the rear half towards the mitigation berm. He's not showing any drainage off to the sides. As a matter of fact, the presence of the concrete block there would prevent drainage going to the west onto Attorney Crusaden's client's property. So if this board has concerns about wetlands or drainage, those will be dealt with. Like I said, certificates of zoning compliance and occupancy will be withheld until the drainage issues and any other engineering concerns that the engineer might have, just like any other house, are taken care of. As far as the wetlands mitigation, that plan is bonded. So if the developer decides to just not do it, we have the money in place to put that plan into action. So there's no concern over that. So,
Stephen, how much of a bond are you holding?
I think,
I thought I saw $8,100, 8,100, but that's the cost.
the bond is for $7,030.
I have a couple questions for you. The block that's around the perimeter, does FEMA allow that? That's a flood zone, correct? An A?
It's an AE11 flood
AE11?
zone.
Does FEMA allow you to put that block around there?
Yeah, it's basically it's a low wall. It's 2 feet high.
So they allow a wall around the
The
property?
zoning regulations wouldn't even consider that a retaining wall because it's not 3 feet high.
I can't hear you.
The zoning regulations don't even consider that to be a retaining wall because it's less than 3 feet high. It's a landscaping feature.
I just wanted to make sure FEMA allowed it. I know
Yes.
they have some tough regulations.
It's only along the western side of the lot and not even the entire length of the lot. It starts about 10 feet in front of the front property line, runs along the western lot line and stops at the berm behind the house.
Okay, one other question. Is it normal to issue a zoning permit without the city engineer sign off? I thought he always had to sign off.
On this type of project, yes. So, for example, if this had been a special permit or a coastal site plan, then the city engineer has to sign off in advance of the plans going to the Planning and Zoning Board. But in this case, this was an as-of-right development. It didn't require planning and zoning approval. So if someone wants to put in a low wall landscaping feature, and he wants to design some drainage to make the flow go towards the street and towards the berm and back, that's all well and good. Of course, he has to demonstrate that those calculations work, and that's the concern of the city engineer. He wants to know that the drainage calculations are going to work. And this developer will not get a CZZ or a CO until the city engineer is satisfied. Not just with drainage, but with all of his concerns.
So what is the bond exactly for?
It's to implement the wetland mitigation plan of March 3rd, 2021.
So on the CO, Wetlands has to sign off and the city engineer has to sign off.
Yes, we typically will withhold CZZs and COs until IWA and engineering concerns are satisfied.
But how are we going to, I mean, I do have the same concern Attorney Crusaden has, that, you know, you could go down there, you're on vacation, and somebody else reads the file and they just issue the CO. You know, things like that do happen. I mean, you know, it's no fault to anybody, but.
That's just, no, in my experience, that just doesn't happen. People just don't sign off. They won't. If someone's on vacation, they'll
Can
wait till
there be letters put in there?
They'll wait till the responsible party comes back.
Can there be letters added to the file that it must be approved by city engineer and wetlands before any CO is issued?
Sure. I don't see why not.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Harris? Mr. Wolf, you have a question?
Stephen, if he continues, this is held, and he has his permits, and he starts framing this house now. If we don't hold that up, and he finishes it and gets a tenant in there and never does this, you pull that bond, we only have $7,100 to carve out water mitigation?
I can't speak to the
Suppositioning.
IW. All I can let the board know is that the wetlands mitigation plan is bonded, and if the developer does not implement it, then we will, because we have the money to do that. Just like any other bond, like
Right.
the Planning and Zoning Board typically will bond for public improvements.
And this byway development that was approved was all 5 or 6 of the homes?
Yes, there is a wetland mitigation plan there's 4 lots altogether.
4.
In this development. And the mitigation plan covers all 4 lots.
Good.
And that was approved by the IWA.
And then subsequent to that, say 2 of those were framed and done, or 3 were framed and done, and then inland wetlands changed?
There was an initial IWA approval, and then subsequent to that, there was an amendment or a second approval. There was a new mitigation plan that they approved in March of 2021.
Okay.
Which supersedes the previous approval.
More restrictive, obviously, for reduction of water or water mitigation, I would assume.
It's whatever IWA's concerns are.
Thanks, Stephen.
Stephen, is this where the old Beachcomber bar was?
No.
Any other questions for Mr. Harris? So, Mr. Harris, the city's position on this right now would be that they can go ahead and keep building this, and the drainage issue is going to be, is it the builder or the city of Milford to eventually correct it?
The city's position is the zoning permit was issued in good faith and it was legal, and that the site is still a construction site, and it will be closed out in the normal fashion. If it does not meet if the builder, for some reason, doesn't satisfy the engineers, all of the engineer's concerns, he won't get a CO and he won't get a CZZ.
So who is eventually going to be responsible for the drainage of that property?
The builder.
Okay.
The builder has to come up with a drainage plan that satisfies the city engineer. And like I said, on the survey used to build this house, he's showing drainage. All right, so we can see what his intent is, but the city engineer wants calculations.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions?
Stephen, I'm
Mr.
reading this
Soto?
letter from the city engineer. I know you might not have the answer for this, or Attorney Crusaden does. It says, necessary permits from the City of Milford Engineering Department for the driveway apron and/or side curb are to be obtained prior to construction. And do you know if the driveway apron and the sidewalk permit was issued by the engineering department?
Those are in place. Those are in place.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Montana.
Mr. Chairman, am I correct, and this goes through Mr. Harris, there will be 4 building lots?
In the wider, in context, this issue is just about 114, Marlin. But the wider context is that there's 4 adjacent lots that the one developer is building. So that's the context.
Could the developer hold off this mitigation until the last home is sold? Will that bond carry 4 years, 5 years?
I can't speak to the IWA bond. I don't know how long it's good for, but I know it's not our job to tell the developer, build this house first, then build that one, and then build that one. He has his own time frame. He's got permits to build these houses, and he can build them as long as he's working towards it.
But if he's creating distress for neighbors in terms of flow and flooding,
Well, you can't hold a builder responsible for things that might happen when the site is still a construction site. And as Bill knows, construction sites can get pretty messy. There's equipment, there's material lying around,
thank you, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Commissioners, any more questions for Mr. Harris? All right, none? Okay, Mr. Crusaders,
Mr.
yours.
Chairman, I would I guess in closing, just say I would respectfully ask the board to uphold the issuance of the zoning permit.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Crusaders.
Mr. Chairman, real briefly, the question of the number of lots is a great one. What happened here is, and if this had been a number of different lots all at once, it would have gone to the Planning and Zoning Board. These were old subdivision lots that used to have old beach homes on them, or beach area homes on them. Those were knocked down. There was lot lines readjusted. So, and I'm not saying it was done intentionally, but each lot is now a single-family lot, so you don't have to go get coastal area site plan approval in this particular circumstance. But the project is a joint project if you look at the wetlands mitigation plan. So in one aspect, he's avoiding planning and zoning approval and planning and zoning scrutiny, and potentially FEMA if one of those lots is close to a tidal wetland or coastal resource. But so he's able to come in as individual lots, and it's being dealt with individually, and now this is actually the last house to be built out of those 4 lots. And what our project engineer, Bob Weway, had said was that this should have been addressed as a whole project. He was not, admittedly, he was not required to do that, but the end result is now you have this drainage problem on this last lot. Secondly, the wetlands mitigation plan does not supersede or amend the original inland wetlands approval. And the wetlands mitigation plan doesn't necessarily have to have anything to do with draining. It's talking about how are they mitigating any damage or destruction or negative impact to the inland wetlands. It's not necessarily, drainage could be a part of that, but it's not specifically part of it. So I think Mary Rose would be shocked to find out that the wetlands mitigation plan is now a substitute for the original approval. There's just no way that that's the case. I obviously disagree. On one hand, Stephen says it's an over-the-counter permit and you don't need engineer sign-off in order for me to issue the permit. But on the other, I disagree with that, first of all. And then secondly, but when this is all done, you need engineer sign-off at the end of it. Well, what I struggle with is I've been at it for a year and a half. I don't understand what the hesitancy is to respectfully ask Mr. Mooney to come in with his project engineer and provide an acceptable stormwater drainage plan that the city engineer can approve. If the city engineer approves it and, and my guy's engineer doesn't like it, that's a private issue between those two. The other part of this, and it's not part of the inland wetlands plan, is that historically 112 drained over 114. Yes, that's a private drainage easement issue, but that information was not provided to inland wetlands at the time of the approval. And I call your attention back to section 4.1.8.3, where it says any work within 100 feet, this is a zoning regulation, 150 feet of an inland wetland that includes fill must go to the Inland Wetlands Agency. That plan did not go to the Inland Wetlands Agency. This Inland Wetland Mitigation Plan does not necessarily address drainage, and it doesn't take into consideration fill on this particular lot that should have been. So if you think about it from your perspective as a board, that Inland Wetlands Board, did not have this information to them when they approved this permit. I think that, and I'm not going to do this, but I think that if I reached out to the chairman and I said, hey, do you know that this is going on? There might be a different response than what the department response is. I don't respectfully again, I don't understand what the urgent, why are we so holding so tightly into allowing this gentleman to continue to do the work when back in 2020 he said he was going to address the drainage when he went in front of the Inland Wetlands Board, and it's still not addressed. If there's something in place, why doesn't he bring it to the engineer? So I think that I don't think that the permit should have been issued, and I think it should be rescinded until he provides that information. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Harris, you have a
Yeah,
comment?
just one little quick comment about fill. Under section 5.7.4, it's exemptions from the fill and excavation regulations. Filling work being done in direct connection to work being done under the building permit, a building permit, is exempt. So this project, for whatever fill they brought on site, was exempt from a filling permit. And that's all I'd like to clarify.
But it's still subject to inland wetlands review according to section 4.
Okay.
Thanks.
No further questions? We're all set? We're not thinking about keeping this one open, right? We're going to make a decision?
Well, I think time is of the essence, and the guy's building, so the quicker you resolve this.
We have to resolve things. We can't
Yeah.
keep putting them aside, so.
My concern here is if you read the emails, they go back to at least June 2021. The city engineer is asking this guy for is asking Mooney for, you know, a whatchamacallit, a plan. And, I mean, here he says on June 29th, 2021, I still haven't received satisfactory stormwater mitigation calculations. So, I mean, they've been asking for this for almost a year.
All right, so at this point, we're going to need a motion, and then we'll have discussion.
Just not to offer testimony, but before you can entertain a motion, the hearing has to be closed.
I'm sorry, would you repeat that, please? And before we entertain a motion?
Before you can entertain a motion, the hearing has to be closed.
Okay, there's no further discussion, no questions from Mr. Harris or Mr. Crusade. All right, this hearing's closed. Okay? All right, we need a motion. We're either going to uphold or overturn.
Would the motion be to approve the appeal? Or
That's a good question. That's a
Mr.
very good
Chairman,
question.
Mr. Chairman, just,
uphold?
Mr. Chairman, not to offer testimony, but the choices before the board are uphold the decision, overturn the decision, or modify the decision.
Could you tell us what our choices are to modify it?
No?
Well, you can make that point, Sarah. But I already closed the hearing.
Well, I understand
Yeah.
that, but we can still, I mean, with respect to what you said, Bill, I don't want to hold things up, but 40 pages came in this afternoon. I didn't have a chance to read any of it.
That's fine.
Motion, no.
Carmina also asked for something from Attorney Crusaden too. What was that?
I'm not allowed to speak if the hearing is closed as an alternate.
She asked for the plan that was presented to the inland wetlands that garnered their approval versus the plan that's in place now, that they haven't seen apparently.
If we postpone this decision, that builder's locked out until a decision is made, correct?
No, I don't think there's a stop work order. Is there, Stephen? Is there a stop work order on it?
No.
Does he hold up construction until this is resolved?
No. There is no stop work order on it.
I can answer a technical question, but I'm not going to wade into something that might be testimony.
I could be wrong, but my understanding is there's a zoning permit in place. The appeal doesn't change that. until
I
we
can't
make
hear
a
you.
What? Oh, my understanding, and I could be wrong, there's a zoning permit in place, and the appeal doesn't change that until we make a decision. So I don't
That's what I
see why
thought,
it
too.
would stop anything.
That's what I think too.
So I would like to make a motion that we hold this over to next month so that we have time to read the newly submitted materials and receive what was requested of Attorney Crusaden.
All right, that would be, if we hold it open, it would be for
Our discussion and
It's-
vote.
our discussion and vote.
I second the motion.
Can we do that, Mr. Harris?
Yes?
Okay, thank you. All right, so we have a motion. And we have a second on the motion to hold this open till, it's open for a vote and discussion.
Yeah,
next
like
month.
the
Next
first
month.
item, yeah.
Okay? Mr. Wolf,
I'm for the motion.
Mr. Soto,
With the motion.
Ms. Ferranti,
With the motion.
Mr. Montana?
I am against the motion.
I'm with the motion, so we're going to keep it open.
Okay.
Open for a vote.
Okay, ready? Item number 3, 574 Milford Point Road, MBP 15/051/5A, R 12.5, Benjamin and Patricia Kovacs, owners. Vary Section 11.2, accessory building of 1,064 square feet where 775 square feet permitted to construct detached garage.
I could take my mask off. Hi, we're,
Just please pull that microphone a little closer to you so we can hear you. Just talk directly into it, and that'd be great.
that's it? Okay. We would like to build a 3-car garage. We're over by 289.
We need your name and your
Oh,
address.
I'm sorry. Hi, I'm Patricia Kovacs. I'm the owner of 574 Milford Point Road, and this is my husband, Ben Kovacs, owner also.
Okay, proceed. Tell us what you'd like to do.
We would like to build a 3-car garage. We are over by 289 square feet. The proposed thing was 775 feet according to zoning, and we're asking for a variance for the 289 square feet to build the 3-car garage.
Okay, is that it? Okay.
That's it.
Okay. Questions right now? Any questions, Mr. Soto?
Yeah. Which side of the wall, the 38-foot or the 28-foot of the door is going to be on?
38.
Okay. Why do you need 38 feet for 3 doors? An average garage door is 9 feet, that's 27 feet. If you could get away with probably 30, 32 feet and have space between the doors.
One door is at 10 by 10 and 2 are 9 by 10. We just wanted the extra space on the side so I can put my stuff in there.
All right, what is the size of this garage? I know it's 1,064 that you're asking. What is the
38
actual-
by 28.
Oh, it's 1,000
Sir, if you can give your name, you can also talk, please.
Ben Kovacs. The actual square footage of the garage is 1,074.
Yeah, I see that, but what is that in feet? Like, what is
Oh,
that, 24 by
No, it's 28 by 38.
38 by 28? Do you know the square footage of your house? Is the square footage of the house on that plan? What is your hardship on why we should approve this?
We just want everything that I have inside the garage.
It's
And
an
if-
extremely oversized garage.
Yeah, but if you have a full-size pickup, four-door with an 8-foot bed on it and a plow, you don't have much room behind you. 28 feet isn't deep at all. Usually average garage is 24. So,
Yeah, the normal size garage is like 24 by
Yeah.
24, but
so if I put a bench behind it, there's really not much room.
The hardship has to go with your land. What is the hardship involving your land that you need this variance?
I don't know how to answer it, but we do have close to half an acre our land.
yes, go ahead, Mr. Montana.
What's the problem with attaching the garage to the home?
The way the house is sit, it's on a corner lot, which way the house was built, I don't have room on the side where the garage was before was right behind the house, about 3 feet off of it, and it was rotted. And it makes it so you can't really get out to your backyard properly. So we took that part off, and we figured by moving the garage over and down would be better, so I'd have more flat backyard, because it slopes otherwise a little bit.
Mr. Chairman, through Mr. Harris, if they attached the garage to the home, there would be no necessity
Right.
for a permit or appeal.
If
Variance.
if they attach the garage to the house, it will be considered part of the house and not a detached accessory structure. It'd be part of the house. It would be part of the house, not an accessory structure.
Thank you. Is there any possible way with design, with architectural helping, you could attach?
We can make a walkway or something.
We can make a walkway or whatever that is wanted. I know somebody, I think building said we had to put walls up. Do they have to be glass walls, or can they be
No,
screened?
it can't be a walkway. It has to be, you could do a breezeway. You could push that garage right to the covered deck and make part of that breezeway, as long as it's attached to the house, and you could even put a full second story on that without even any variance at all. So you have a lot of options here.
Okay,
We really didn't want to attach it to the house.
yeah.
Then you could make a 45-foot-long garage.
I got that. We could even put an apartment above it, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
We're only asking for 289 square feet.
Sir, we give variances as reasonable variances. If we give everything in the extreme, then there's really no reason to even have this board.
So there would be no problem with having an extreme house being 45, 50 feet going down my side of my property?
I'm
I would
sorry,
think-
just say what you said again.
If I added to my house and added more house and added to the garage, my house would be then about 45, 50 feet. That's okay?
As long as you're within the setback lines, you need no variance from us.
Don't you think that's more odd looking than,
Well, you don't have to go 45, I was just
No,
using
I'm
that as
just
an
saying.
example. You could do your 38 feet, but you could put a room above it, make a man cave for your husband,
no?
We don't need that. Well, the other problem
make a
is-
craft room for you.
The other problem is, it is a corner lot, so our setbacks are a little harder than a normal lot.
Yeah.
Well, I think if you push that deck closer to the house, your setbacks will get bigger, not smaller. I think. It looks like it.
Only, but it's,
You have the room to push the garage to the back, too.
Any other questions? Is there anyone else here speaking in favor? Anyone else here speaking in favor of this application? Is there anyone here opposed? Anyone here opposed to this application? Any further comments that you would like to make, or commissioners, questions? This hearing's closed. Okay, we need a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve, we have a second. Discussion? Go ahead, Mr. Wolf, you look like you're ready for discussion.
You're looking at this apron for the existing driveway. We all drove by this and looked at it, and you're cutting in a new apron for a 3-car garage. And, yeah, it can be modified, absolutely. I don't know if you have to have a 3. It'd be great to have a 3-car garage, but I agree with the concerns of the board that it could be modified and position changed.
It's way too oversized for the property. Is it way too oversized for an accessory garage?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not oversized for the property. As we said, if they attached it, they could have that and more. So if they want the size, they're going to have to figure out how to attach it, which can be done with some more thought. Or if they want it where it is, it's going to have to conform, because we haven't heard a proper hardship.
And elevations or additional drawings provided at this point? Can I ask Stephen that question now? Do we have any drawings of the elevations or the construction of the property?
You have this blueprint that you have in front of you.
Okay.
Do you have that?
Yeah, no,
No, I agree, they have plenty of options here. There's really no hardship.
and we can motion to, well, we can
Well,
deny
we
it
have
and they
the
come
motion.
back. Denied with prejudice, without?
We have a motion
Okay.
to approve, and we have a second on the motion.
Right.
If there's no other comments, I'll take a vote. All right, we have a motion to approve, we have a second on the motion. Ms. Franti,
Against the motion.
Mr. Montana,
Against the motion.
Mr. Wolf,
I'm against the motion.
Mr. Soda.
Against the motion.
I'm against the motion. Motion fails.
Item number 5, 85 Milford Point Road, MBP 06/084/24, R7.5, Kevin Kersaden Esquire for George and Rosa Haller, owners. Varies section 3.1.4.1, front yard setback to 3.1 feet where 20 feet required, and easterly side yard setback to 4.7 feet where 5 feet required to construct an attached garage addition.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Kevin Kersaden for the applicant and owners, Rosa and George Holler, who are here with me tonight. My office is at 3 Lafayette Street in Milford. I did also submit a memo with a couple of documents late today. I have paper copies if I can pass them out to the board if anyone needs them.
Thank you, sir.
So this is an old subdivision lot. The subdivision was recorded on the land records around 1916. It's map E332 in the Milford Land Records. That's 13 years before the Milford zoning regulations and subdivision regulations were enacted in 1929. So from the beginning, the lot was 48.9 by 150 feet. You may have noticed that the lot is a lot longer now on the beach side of the property since the lot was created. And that's due to accretion or the natural beach drift or sand drift over the years occurring and piling up sand over in the Cedar Beach area. So unfortunately, I mean, it's nice to have a beach, but that's not usable land for building purposes because of the natural resources on the site, including beach grass, sand dunes, other natural resources that you're not allowed to build in or should only be building in under very certain limited circumstances. So once the zoning regulations were put into place, it was D residence zone. I included some of the D residence zone, it's the zoning table or the table of bulk requirements from back then. And the front yard, minimum front yard setback back then was the average setback line observed by buildings on the same side of the street between two intersecting streets on the date of passage of these regulations. And it's interesting because it's a beautiful area down there by the, Audubon, but it's interesting, it has its own feel. You can see the structures right on Milford Point Road, whether they're garages or houses. I would probably think that the reason that is the way it is because of the existing the initial regulations back during that time. There was at least a house on the property in 1956. That house is no longer here. We don't know the exact location of it. We assume it was in roughly the same footprint. This house was built in 1970, or at least that's what it says at the assessor's records. It may have been a rehab of the existing house or an addition on the existing house. We're not really sure. So I included the GIS map of the street area and the neighborhood because there's many other properties, and this will go to one of the other points about whether a variance should be granted or not. There are many other properties where there's either a garage, a shed, or a house right up, a foot or two away from the street line or from the front property line. And this property actually had one of those garages. You can still see it on the GIS map that was about 2 feet from the property line from the front property line on the opposite side of the lot where this garage and this application is. The house is in a flood zone. There are natural resources on site. It's not like you can push the house forward and tear up the beach grass or the dunes. That probably would not be allowed I don't know if that would be subject to DEEP. It's a single-family house, but they're within, you could probably make the argument they're within 100 feet of coastal resources. The house was elevated in '98 by one of the previous owners. The way they did it then was I don't know if anyone had an opportunity to drive by the house. You can see the piers that are underneath the house. They did it in a way that's not either popular today. I don't know if it's a construction issue, but it didn't leave any room under the house for any type of parking. And so when the Hollers purchased this house a few years ago, they elevated it last year, 2021, and they used the existing piers, and I think they just extended those piers. So there wasn't an opportunity where they could elevate it from scratch and then put parking underneath the house because the piers were already there and blocking it. So the lot remained in the D residence zone until 1962, when it was then changed to R7 and is now R7-5 today. Now, the minimum width requirement for the current zone is 60 feet. When it was initially changed in 1962, it was 75 feet. So the lot's always been a pre-existing, non-conforming lot. It's long and thin. Right now, it has more area than required, but it's not like substantial or usable area. It's extra natural resources. The standard for granting a variance, Connecticut General Statutes 8-6, 2 conditions must be met. The variance must be shown not to substantially affect the comprehensive zoning plan. What they mean by comprehensive zoning plan is the zoning regulations and the zoning map. And that's usually has to do with the use of the type of property. So in this particular case, it's a single-family house going to a single-family use, staying a single-family use, with a garage serving the single-family use, and they're asking for basically a two-car garage with it. So the approval under Section 1, we're in compliance, we meet that standard because, single-family house in a single-family zone. Many two-car garages are allowed in a single-family zone. The residential car use is allowed in a single-family zone. Also, many properties in the neighborhood have structures, like I said, on the street, but also a lot of properties in the R75 zone have two-car garages. So I think we do meet the first requirement without much of a problem. The requirement number 2 is where you're looking for the hardship. It's where the adherence to the strict letter of the zoning ordinance. So the hardship has to arise from the application of the zoning ordinance to the specific circumstances that surround this lot. I listed the hardships. We have natural resources. It's in a FEMA flood zone. It had to be elevated. They don't want to push it any more further toward the beach. There is not a lot of parking on site because of the way that this lot and many lots in that neighborhood were developed over time. The lot is about 18% too narrow for the zone. So they wouldn't need a side yard setback if the lot was the regular width. And arguably, they might be able to put a two-car garage side by side if the lot was, 12 feet, wider. In this particular case, if they were to put a garage side by side, number one, they would still need a variance for the setback, from the front yard setback. And number 2, they would lose parking. So the plan is to be able to park 2 cars inside this garage. It's not attached now. It would be attached to the principal structure. So you had that discussion earlier with the previous application about accessory structures. This would now be considered part of the principal structure if this was approved and it was actually attached. They have very limited space for parking. The plan would be to be able to pull in the 2 cars tandem, and when one of the cars wanted to pull the car that's parked closest to the house out and then back out of the driveway, which is why I submitted an updated site plan that showed some pavers on the other side of the garage. So it would be a pull through and then back out. There is a second-story addition that's allowed if it's attached as part of the principal structure. I gave some examples. I know that it's just to get an understanding of what previous cases have been and what courts have decided upholding variances in the past. Very briefly, variance was upheld when the owner of a residential lot wanted to add a 2-car garage over the side yard setback in a neighborhood where most other properties had 2-car garages. Variance granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals for a vacant lot was upheld even though it was possible to build a house which was smaller than the proposed structure without a variance, where the size of the lot, there was a storm drainage easement. So these are all things that are specific to that property that create what's considered a hardship or a practical difficulty. The fact that it abutted a river, this is Long Island Sound with the coastal resources, and the setback lines were unique features. This lot the front yard is a little oddly shaped. It's the angle of the street, so the part of the garage is a little bit closer than the other part of the garage would be. And, based on topography. So there are definitely several different legal hardships that run with the land and are unique. The test is not whether it's unique to the neighborhood, but whether it's unique to the zone. So if you look at a zoning map for R75 in Milford, you're not going to see, not all of the R75 lots are old subdivision lots on the property. So in this particular case, it's different than other properties in the zone based on the long pre-existing non-conforming history of the property when you compare it to properties citywide in the R75 zone. And the application and enforcement of the zoning regulations as you apply it to this property with all of those hardships I listed prohibit the construction of a two-car garage where, without a variance, regardless of which way we do it, we would need a variance for the addition of the two-car garage. That's really the extent of it. I included the old deed because you can see that a house existed in '56 and the size of the lot back then, the subdivision map. I just highlighted some of the other structures in the zone. And then Mr. Holler had taken this picture of one of the properties very close by. It's the next lot. I think it's one lot over where the structure sits almost directly on the street. So it's not unusual, and especially based on the history and the development of the lots over a period of time. So pending your questions, that is my application.
I have two questions for you. Is there going to be living space above the garage?
There is it's not an apartment, it's proposed like a gym or workout studio. There's not a lot of room. I think it's a little bit under 2,000 square feet in the principal structure, so this would add additional living space on the second floor, correct?
Right. And the walkway, why is the walkway so long between the garage and the house?
That's the distance between the house. It's an elevated walkway. It's above the flood elevation. So that's just the distance between the house and the, it's a, whatever you want to call it, breezeway, walkway. It's an enclosed walkway. Yeah.
Joe, there's a garage door in the back of the garage, so that way he can pull the car up to the existing house and back it out around the staircase. It's a really clever design.
Okay, questions for Attorney Crusader?
One question, Kevin. Yeah, second floor of this garage with the proposed extension is full electrical and plumbing on the second. And then
Not a kitchen. It's got
Okay.
I think it has a small
one bath?
bathroom, correct.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions? None? Okay. Is there anyone else speaking in favor? Anyone else want to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone here opposed? Anyone opposed? No further questions? This hearing's closed.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion to approve, and we have a second on the motion. Discussion?
Yeah, I mean, he had a single-car garage there. I mean, it looks really nice. I love the way they did it, and that elevated walkway with the two garage doors. I mean, it solves a lot of problem. It gets 2, maybe even 3 cars off the street.
I agree. I know Cedar Beach well, being in Laurel. There's a lot of properties that abut right up against the face of Milford Point. To keep cars out of Milford Point Road is a benefit to this. And I like the design. It's interesting, so I'm okay.
Any other comments? No other comments? Okay. So we had a motion to approve, and we had a second on the motion. Mr. Wolf?
I'm for the motion.
Mr. Soto?
I'm with the motion.
Ms. Ferranti?
With the motion. With the
Mr.
motion.
Montana?
With the motion.
I'm with the motion. It's approved. Okay, Meg, along the bottom here, where are our footnotes? New business? I have to remember this stuff. New business? Any new business? Any old business? Staff updates? What's on the agenda for next month? 102 Melba, 114 Merwin Avenue, 201 Kings Highway. Anything else?
Nothing to date.
We've got a lot of loose ends here. Okay, motion to adjourn?
Second the motion?
Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Oh, acceptance, I'm sorry. Acceptance of the minutes from last month. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This meeting is adjourned.
I have some reading materials.